The Golden Baseball. Okay, so we're going to discuss possible outcomes for a few randomly selected teams in the 2011 season. So I picked 5. Let's go on to the Houston Astros.
Houston Astros. This is a team that we haven't really talked about a lot. But I think they have some good talent on that team.
They have some good talent. Some guys worth speaking of in their rotation, but overall, not a lot of great things to say about this team.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways I agree with you, but I mean, people haven't really discussed the Houston Astros that much this winter because of all the moves and the 76 and 86 record from their 2010 season, and the moves that have been made by other NL Central teams. But if you look at their team, they've got, they've got some talent. Hunter Pence, Michael Bourne, Carlos Lee. These guys are all, they're all proven. They create runs, I think. Together. And
I'm not that big a fan of Carlos Lee.
Carlos Lee, he is a little overrated, or not really overrated, but he's old.
Yeah.
Older. But you look at their projected depth chart for 2011. In left field, you have Carlos Lee. Center field, Michael Bourne. Right field, Hunter Pence. Then shortstop, you got Clint Barmas. Third base, you got Chris Johnson. Last year, this is a guy that nobody really knows about except for the people that follow the Astros and probably the NL Central. But I think he's a very talented player. He did hit over 300 last year with 11 home runs. He was good with runners on base. Clint Barmas, they picked up from the Rockies over the winter. In 2009, Clint Barmas hit 23 home runs. So there's value there at shortstop.
Yeah, and in 2010 he had a .77 GO/AO. Woo!
Yeah, these are good stuff. Bill Hall, someone they're also looking to have a bounce back year. In some ways, and then first base you got Brett Wallace, who was a rookie last year, kind of struggled, but he does have a lot of potential. And their catcher, their catching situation is a little shaky. Humberto Quintero will be their catcher. But I like their rotation. Wandy Rodriguez, talented southpaw. Brett Myers had an insane year last year. 15-game winner. ERA.
Insane for the standards of Houston.
For the standard. J. Happ. This guy was a stud in Philadelphia. I loved that move, picking him up. Dumping a guy that was really good with the Phillies down the stretch and figures to possibly have another really good year, but might retire for a guy that, J. Happ, I think could be a fixture in their rotation for the next 6 years. I think he had a good year last year. Bud Norris, a guy who they didn't really he didn't really have a great year, but a lot of that was luck. He had a high batting average in balls in play last year. And a good xFIP, which is expected fielding, independent pitching. It was under 4, and that's I think it was like 3.3, which is kind of the same scale as earned run average. And then Nelson Figueroa was with the New York Mets for a while. They dumped him in spring training, spent some time with the Phillies, ended up with the Astros. I think he's a pretty talented pitcher from what I've seen from him in his time with the Phillies, Mets, and Astros, and he did have a pretty good ERA with the Phillies with the Astros last year. I don't really like their bullpen though. Brandon Lyon is their closer, and a couple of no names basically. No offense to those guys. So
another thing to mention about their rotation is it's not set in stone. They actually have 8 potential starters, including Alex Rodriguez. Well, probably not Alex, but
Let's just call him A-Rod.
Okay.
And Yuri Rodriguez.
Oh, of course. And Yuri Rodriguez.
Last year the spring training had a 9.0 ERA this spring. I don't know if he'll be.
It's
in the
respectable.
rotation.
As well as Ryan Roland Smith is on
Mhm.
that, and Mr. Pendleton
Yes.
is also on that list. So
Yes.
there's going to be some competition for the bottom spots of that rotation.
Mhm.
Not really an exciting competition for my standards. Yeah, and their bullpen very lacking.
I mean, they got Brendan Lyon, Jay Fulcino, Arias, Lopez, Malenkin, Wright, Del Rosario. You know, I don't really know what to say about that bullpen, but who knows? They lost Tim Burdak last winter, who was a pretty good left-handed specialist for them. But what they did, someone who we haven't talked about is Jeff Keppinger, who they didn't rank as one of the leading contenders, but can play first, second, and third. His year last year was it was pretty solid. 6 home runs, 288 batting average, 59 RBIs. And those numbers aren't great. They did have 34 doubles last year. I think they believe in him down in Houston. I think their hitting coach last year felt he has a lot of potential, and assuming Bill Hall or perhaps if Chris, I'm a believer personally in Jeff Keppinger and Chris Johnson. So I think Keppinger should take the second base job over Bill Hall. Unless over the season things change. And Bill Hall, I like Bill Hall as a bench player. He was pretty solid with the Red Sox last year. Hit some good home runs. I think some of this team is kind of a crapshoot. Some of this team at the same time has talent, has potential, and a team that could, be a surprise in 2011. I know we've been saying, I know I've personally said that about a lot of teams, but I actually kind of like their roster.
Well, for the sake of some competition in that division, I hope so. The Reds, especially with what's happened to the Cardinals recently, seem like they're going to have a pretty free ride this year.
Yeah.
So, best of luck to Houston. We're going to move on to the Boston Red Sox.
The Boston Red Sox.
Boston.
First, I'll let you lead this off.
The Boston Red Sox. If we can get, excuse me, I'm not going to associate myself with that team. If the Red Sox can get a strong year out of Josh Beckett, they are going places. I have them easily winning the division if that happens. Other two already solid members of that rotation, John Lester and Clay Buchholz, almost ace quality, both of those guys. If Beckett can put it together, ace quality they are. The Red Sox now have one of the best lineups in baseball.
Perhaps the best.
They have